Feeling Loudly channel. If you're new here, great to have you. If you're coming back, hi, I love you. And today's reading, we are focusing on how to harness your creative energy. And so this is for anyone who maybe identifies as a creative, for anyone who would like to identify as a creative, or just for any human who may feel creatively blocked, a little bit stuck, or who's just looking for kind of new access points to help open up to their creative potential. And so by creativity, I mean like all forms of creativity. That doesn't just have to mean art. That doesn't just have to mean writing or performance. We are constantly creating. We're constantly creating our lives. And so just being a creator is an identification that I think is helpful for a lot of us to start moving into. Because it empowers us. Seeing ourselves as creators is empowering. And so in this reading, part of what we're going to focus on is what your creative gifts really are. And this will partially just be for you to identify if it's the right reading for you. So we're going to start there. Then we're going to focus on what is in your way, what kind of creative blockages you're facing right now. And then how you can move through those. So what types of creative actions can you take to kind of further that momentum or get past the blockages? Finally, we're going to pull an archetype card for each of you, and that will kind of be like your creator archetype. And that's something that you can work with as you're exploring new ways to unlock and harness your creativity. If you're interested in a personal reading, you can find the link down below. You can find links to my upcoming events and my social if you want to follow me. If you find this reading valuable, please do subscribe, comment, like, share. All of that is really, really helpful as I build this channel. All right, let's get into it. So we have 3 groups today. You can choose based on the card, the sort of style of the back of the card, or the crystal. For our group 1, right here, we have the Aquarian Tarot by David Palladini. And so here's the back, and here's your crystal. I think this is a black tourmaline. For group 2, we have the New World Tarot by Cristy. This is a rose quartz tumbler. And then for group 3, we have the Portals Tarot by Ursula of That's So Pisces. And this is a pink jasper. So take a second to feel in intuitively and decide which one is calling to you today. And then I will meet you in your reading. You can jump ahead using the timestamps or the chapters function in YouTube. See you there. If you chose the Aquarian Tarot by David Palladini and this black tourmaline, I think it is. It's tourmaline or onyx. I'm not good with crystals, but this is your reading. Let's get into it. So as a reminder, we're going to start with kind of the anchor energy, which is going to be focused on your creative gifts. And then we'll jump into blockages, creative actions, and then finally your creative archetype. I'm also going to roll the astro dice, so you'll hear a little bit of rolling noise, and that's going to help us tune into this introductory energy focused on your creative powers. So your anchor card is the 9 of Cups, which is beautiful. This is a really beautiful card to come out as the anchor for this reading because it tells me that there's a lot within you. You have probably a really wide range of gifts. You probably are the type of person who's interested in many different creative pursuits. You may be kind of multi-talented or multi-dimensional in that way. You might work with a lot of different mediums. Or you might be someone who just sources a lot of fulfillment from the act of creation. You might be an artist. You might be a writer. You might be a dancer, a performer, or someone who kind of like falls into more of the not traditional, but more of like what we think of when we think of a creative. If this is not aligning, then this is definitely not your reading. However, I will say if you're feeling resistance to this, but you know that internally you do possess a lot and that there's kind of a lot that's yet to be unlocked within you, but like you're constantly sort of like your interest is sparked by a lot of different things. You maybe have this desire or this urge to dabble in a whole lot of different types of creative work and energy, then this could very well be your reading, and that could be the blockage that we're intended to explore today. Okay? So we'll start there. Let's go ahead and roll the astro dice to get a little bit more information about how your creative energy kind of shows up. So it's like sticking out to me that your energy is very blue. The Aquarian tarot itself is blue. The back of the card is blue. Let me just show it to you again. And it has this sort of like abstract quality to the back, like all patterns, different sort of textures coming out of it. And then also my little bag for my astro dice is blue, and also I'm wearing blue, a deep blue. So the color blue might be important to you. Blue is associated with the throat too. And so there's an energy of speech or communication that might be important to your creative practices as well. Okay, so we have the first house, Uranus, and Taurus, which is also associated with the throat. I had a feeling that was going to come out. So the first house is about your sense of self, your identity. It's often connected to the body, but it's the first house. It's usually like what we first associate with in life. And so when we're born and we come out of the womb, it's like, I am in a body. I am in the world in a body. And that's sort of the experience. And with Uranus, there's this sort of shock factor and this innovation and this revolutionary energy that comes through. And with Taurus can be very connected to the body too, and with sensuality. And so for you, it may be that these themes play a really important role in your sort of creative power. Like, for example, you might be, again, a dancer, someone who uses their body in really significant ways when it comes to your creative practices. You might be someone who has a sort of like radical approach to creativity. You might just be sort of like a revolutionary spirit. You might be someone, again, we said, who kind of like dabbles in many different areas. And so that might be part of your sort of Uranian appeal, is that you bring things together in this really creative and sort of wild way that is very singular, very unique, and something that is like not possible to replicate. Like Uranian energy generally is not something that can be replicated because it's so true to the individual. And we see that with the first house here too, that your creative practices are very true to you, or that's the type of creative practice that you would like to engage in, that's sort of calling to you, but potentially what you've been blocked from chasing. Like you may feel a little bit trapped. You may feel a little bit like crowded in or boxed in by tradition or by norms of some kind. And it's kind of hitting me that also this could be related to gender expression. This could be related to your style, since the first house, is often connected to our style and the way that we sort of physically present. So it could be that you're really kind of shaking up norms in that area, whether that means like you're non-binary, you're trans, or someone who's really disrupting the sort of like traditional gender role and gender norms, or someone who just brings a lot of sort of radical energy to the way that you show up in the world. And it could be that just the way that you live and the way that you dress and the way that you kind of carry yourself is a very creative act in itself. It could be too that with Taurus here, you have a sort of radical approach to sensuality, a sort of radical approach to the way that you orient toward your body, okay? And part of that could be that like your creativity is rooted in an act of self-love. And Taurus being connected to Venus, and Venus also being connected to our style and what we find beautiful, it could be that you've really kind of redefined beauty, and that's a really big piece of your creative impact in this world. All right, so again, if none of that resonates, then, or if that doesn't spark you, like, yeah, that feels true, I just haven't been able to access that yet. If it feels completely out of step, then this is not your reading. Okay. let's move on. So I want to get a couple more cards about your gifts, and then we'll move into your blockages. So what else do we need to know about my group one's creative gifts? What else do we need to know about my group one's creative gifts? Well, I'm dropping cards left and right today. Okay, let's start here. So we have the King of Cups and we have the Hermit in reverse. So with the King of Cups, it feels like you could have major Pisces placements in your chart. Pisces could be significant for you. And again, I mentioned Taurus earlier, so Taurus could be significant for you. And then with the Hermit, that's connected to Virgo. So it's possible that those signs are prominent in your chart, as in you have significant planets or angles in those signs, but not necessarily. I'm thinking about the fact with the King of Cups that this is often someone who is connected to their emotions, but who may not express them as visibly. And so part of what I feel is that processing emotions for you happens like pretty powerfully through artistic practices. So it could be a sort of facilitator for you of feeling. Maybe you're someone who has a little bit of trouble. We mentioned throat earlier. Maybe you're someone who has a little bit of trouble expressing themselves through words or in sort of everyday communication with other human beings. And it could be that your art really speaks for you and that your art really kind of tells the stories and conveys the emotions that you might have more trouble just like speaking with your mouth. The King of Cups can be a little bit more reserved. And so there is this sort of like withholding energy that can come through with this figure. And so one thing that might be difficult for you, and we'll explore this in blockages, is how to not develop a relationship of like more, I guess, dependency with your artistic practices, where it may hold you back from forming intimate connections with other people because you sort of pour all of yourself into your art or pour all of your emotions into your art, and then you don't give those to the people that you're in connection with too. So that might land for you. Maybe you've been told that you're a person who is very inward. The King of Cups leading into the Hermit in reverse is kind of echoing that energy a little bit. The Hermit in reverse often kind of needs to come out of hiding. There's a need to be in connection. It could be that you easily fall into phases where you're really deep in isolation and it is hard for people to reach you. You may go into phases of introspection that you then find it hard to kind of climb out of because it feels safe there. And that's like a safe zone, comfort zone for you to be more like enclosed. But it could also be that that's really when you create some of your most powerful work or when you're really able to access your creativity. And so what I feel like might come up for you in the blockages is that sometimes though you may remove yourself from life in a way, and that may actually end up hindering you more than it helps you, because we have to live in order to create. We have to kind of experience life and experience different environments in order to actually kind of have material to work with. And, some of the greatest artists are people who really lived their lives. And so I feel for you, this may be sort of a challenge that you may hold yourself back, or you may kind of like lean on your artistic practices or your creative practices sometimes as more of a crutch to support you or to kind of keep you safe. And you may limit yourself from kind of going out there and living. Okay, so let's get into your blockages. We've already kind of touched on this. I'm going to leave the anchor card out just as a reminder for myself, but I'm going to shuffle the rest of the cards back into the deck. And our question now is, what are my group one's blockages when it comes to creativity? One more, please. Okay. Okay, so we have the Ace of Rods, also known as the Ace of Wands. We have the Ten of Pentacles, and we have the Knight of Rods or the Knight of Wands. So the Ace of Rods or Ace of Wands is in the reverse here, which ultimately is like a lack of inspiration. And I feel that this ties into the message from the Hermit reversed, where it may be that you're withholding, or you're really like staying in isolation to a degree that's holding you back from living and getting inspired by life. And so it could be that for you, I'm going to move the mic. It could be that for you, you're needing more time outside. You're needing more stimulation. You're needing more life. And that could be physical too. It could be like you're needing to move your body more often. You're needing to kind of get the energy of your body flowing so that your creative energy can in turn flow. But ultimately, this feels like a lack of inspiration. And so kind of like writer's block, or like an artist block of sorts, where you just feel like maybe something is halted, maybe something is sticky, maybe something is feeling kind of unbudgeable, and you're maybe feeling more depressed, or if not depressed, just kind of like on the lower side, like having a hard time motivating, having a hard time like wanting to kind of engage. With the 10 of Pentacles in the upright, this could have to do with family or finances or both. This could be related to your community. This could be related to not feeling resourced and not feeling materially kind of set in a way that inhibits your creativity. Because when we think about sort of our material security as this like base need that we need to get met so that we can create, it's really difficult. I mean, it's absolutely possible and people do it all the time, but it's difficult to create and be like a prolific creator if we're feeling financially insecure, if we're feeling like housing insecurity, or if our foundation, whatever that foundation means to us, feels really shaky. So that could be true for some of you. For another group of you, I feel that maybe there's some sort of expectation or legacy that you've been like almost indoctrinated into and expected to uphold when it comes to your family line or your community or whatever. So this could look like trying to fit into like traditional norms around like getting married, having kids, etc. This could be like what we mentioned earlier about like fitting into a box when it comes to your gender expression or your gender identity or your sexual identity. This could have more to do with like body autonomy, and maybe there's some sort of pressure that you're feeling to kind of like carry on the legacy of family, of elders, of community, like whatever you kind of feel like you're a part of. And that this could be sort of like tamping down your energy in some way. And then finally, with the Knight of Rods or the Knight of Wands, it feels like this is bringing us back to the Ace of Wands in reverse, where there was that lack of inspiration. But also I wonder if you're having a hard time accessing fun in your creative practices. Like you might be taking it really seriously, and that could be inhibiting you. It feels like some play and some fun and some joy and lightness could be really supportive for you. But that's a piece that maybe has been missing lately. Maybe it's felt more serious. Maybe it's felt more like work as opposed to fun. Maybe you literally are like a professional creative or artist or whatever. And that has been difficult because it's sort of like you have to associate the creative work that you do with making money and with your livelihood. And so it introduces all of this like really heavy pressure to do it right and to do it in a way that like supports you financially, which is a really like common and tricky thing that a lot of creators of all kinds face. So now that we've pulled these, I'm going to pull a sort of answer to each one of these cards. And this will help us kind of tune into potential solutions or ways that you can unhook from these energies, ways that you can overcome them, or ways that you can just support yourself in maybe easing the impact that they're having on you. So for the Ace of Rods in reverse, for the 10 of Pentacles upright, and for the Knight of Rods. And the King of Cups is coming up at the bottom of the deck again, so that feels important. Pisces might be really significant in your chart. Okay. So to speak to that really quickly, I feel like accessing your emotions is a really big piece of this. So if you're having difficult emotions coming up, if you're experiencing depression, if you're experiencing sort of like low moods, being with that instead of trying to fix it is a really big piece of this. Being with your feelings, maybe tuning into them daily, maybe like one recommendation that I like that Jessica Lanyadoo always shares is like setting a timer to feel your feelings for like 5 to 10 minutes and not try to like think your way through them, not try to resolve them, not try to find answers because that's like mental. And we want to try to tap into how does this feel in my body? Where do I feel this in my body? And that sort of intuitive connection to your own body and to your own emotions ends up often becoming really productive because the more we tune into our bodies, desires, feelings, discomfort, the more self-attunement we develop. And self-attunement is a lot of the time a door that we open to creativity and to buoyancy and to like generativity. So anyway, that's the first piece. Let's speak to these. So the Ace of Wands in reverse, as the answer, we have the Nine of Wands. So it could be for some of you that you've been working on something for a really long time and you're feeling discouraged. If that doesn't land, it could be that you're just really exhausted. Like you could just, again, be feeling the pressure of like living this life and trying to be an adult in this world, which can be really hard. And you're feeling like that lack of inspiration is sort of like the world has gotten you down. With the Nine of Rods upright, it's important to remind ourselves of how much work we've already put in and to celebrate ourselves for that. It's also important to rest and recuperate when we can and to take things in smaller steps and try, instead of trying to like finish something off in a rush because we just want to get to the end of it and we're sick of focusing on it. Or taking on like a million things. Like we did have the Nine of Cups earlier as your anchor card. So with like many interests and many focuses and gifts can also come at times overwhelm because we want to kind of do it all at once. And so the Nine of Rods, personally, when it comes up, the way that I interpret it often is like we need to put one foot in front of the other and we need to take a pause and we need to breathe. It's like you're almost at the summit of a mountain after a really long journey and you need to like stop instead of just like forcing yourself ahead to finish the journey. You need to stop and check in with yourself and breathe and have a glass of water and have a snack and like, and then proceed forward. And so it could be that these emotions that are coming up for you, or this lack of inspiration, is really just like a lack of physical energy and emotional energy. The Ten of Pentacles upright, our answer is the High Priestess in reverse. So I feel that for some of you, the pressure that you might be feeling externally, whether that's like more material, familial, societally, etc., it could be that that's also kind of pushing you away from your intuition. And you may be feeling like you can't tap into that sort of connection that you might have with spirit. You may be someone who kind of considers the creative work that you do a form of channeling. And it could be that it feels like, or maybe your fear is that you're cut off from that or in some way, or that you're just having a hard time accessing it lately. And as a response to the Ten of Pentacles, it feels like you're needing to not sort of outsource your power, to not like look to your peers, to look to your family, to look to your elders to kind of understand what your truth is. You're needing to get reacquainted with your intuitive self. You're like, just like periodic check-ins throughout the day can do this. Like, how am I feeling today? What do I want today? Who do I want to spend time with today? Like asking yourself questions can be a really powerful way to kind of unlock your truths and to get back in touch with yourself. And I feel that the more you do that, the more you're going to notice yourself attuning to yourself instead of maybe like people pleasing, instead of maybe defaulting to what other people want to do, because it feels like developing that sort of center and cultivating your sense of self is an important piece of the puzzle here. And then finally for the Knight of Rods, which was speaking more to like needing to have more play, needing to have more fun with it. Maybe things have been feeling really serious. Our answer is the Hanged One. And so the Hanged One is all about perspective. We're flipped upside down, kind of forced to stay in place, hanging here, suspended in place. And it can be really uncomfortable, but it can also be really enlightening. And so one thing that you can do is to use this time where you might feel more blocked as an opportunity to gain new perspective on what it is that you truly want and what type of energy you want to bring into your creative practices. Because if you have been feeling kind of tamped down, if you've been feeling like things are like boring or like sad or stuffy or like whatever, kind of stiff, just like taking a second to check in and be like, what is it that I really want here? How do I want to relate to my creative practices? Do I want to have a lot of fun? Like, if fun is a piece of this puzzle for me, then how can I shift things to make it more fun for myself? And how can I take a new perspective on my creative practices, on my creations, so that I am not seeing it maybe with such like intense seriousness and maybe duty or obligation even. So all about shifting your sort of perspective and in turn your attitude. Okay, so we are going to move on now to what additional creative actions you can take. We've sort of spoken to this already with like the answers to each one of those, but I want to get just a few more answers. And then we will end with the creator archetype that you can work with to continue to sort of unlock your gifts. So what other creative actions can group one take to support themselves in their creative pursuits? So first up, we have judgment in the reverse. So it could be that could be that you're actually being overly hard on yourself, and maybe you're scrutinizing your work pretty severely and it's not actually an accurate like representation of your gifts and your creations. So you might need to, in that perspective shift and sort of like taking a pause to really look at things honestly, it could be that part of that is being gentler with yourself, that part of that is striving for imperfection instead of perfection, and that part of that is opening up to other perspectives, like maybe asking other people to weigh in on what you're doing or creating and just see what they say. Ideally, people who are like loving and like not hypercritical, but also like not people pleasy, like people that can kind of be like, no, like you're fucking talented. You're talented. So it feels like you might need a little bit more like gentleness in this area, because there's a degree of like you're considering yourself being self-aware when you criticize yourself or when you criticize your work, but it feels like you're actually not at all. It feels like you're being really harsh and it's not actually like a legit representation of your gifts. The other piece, which is similar here, is the Three of Cups, which is about community and connection, and often like connecting with people that we really care about. And so for you, spending more time with people you love, spending more time with friends, spending more time getting outside, going on hikes, going to the beach, going to the lake, spending time in the forest, like being outside with people you care about feels important, and getting out of that sort of like hermit mode and like moving into more social relationships as a way to get inspired and to feel uplifted. I think you feel like you need to keep yourself hidden in order to create, but in fact, I really think that you need to connect with people in order to create. And then finally, the Fool. So I'm feeling like a new beginning is really on the horizon for you, and that involves this large perspective shift. I would encourage you to actually celebrate that, to actually sort of like mark a moment where you feel like you're ready to transition into a new way of relating to your creativity. And so this might be like a new moon ritual. We have the new moon in Leo coming up on August 16th. That would be a beautiful time to do this. If you're listening to this after that date, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be on the new moon, but that's just a way to kind of work with the energy of the moment and the astrology of the moment to support you in whatever you're attempting to do. But I would encourage you to really like set intentions, see it as a new chapter in your creative life, and really honor that. Like, take that seriously. If you have to take something seriously, then take this new beginning seriously and put energy into it. Like, write down intentions, create a little mini ceremony, make it a creative and beautiful practice that helps you tune in, and have fun while also like setting serious intentions for how you want to relate to these practices. And I feel that if you do that, you're really going to be able to deeply tap back into yourself. You're going to be able to deeply tap back into your gifts and to express them with more boldness and really sort of like take up space and revolutionize in that Uranian way that might be really significant for you. Okay. So let's go ahead and end with your creator archetype. And I'm pulling from the Archetypes deck by Kim Kranz. And I will share what comes through intuitively for you. And then I'll also pull open the guidebook and just like hold it up to the screen so you can take a screenshot, because there's usually cool information on these cards. Okay, so what is the creator archetype that pile 1 is being invited to work with? The cave. That's interesting, because I'm kind of inviting you to like come out of a cave, so to speak. But I wonder if there are riches that you've really discovered in these inward moments, in these inward periods that have a lot of potential for you, that have a lot of value. I'm sure there are. I mean, there usually are. That's usually part of the reason that we sort of stay inside of ourselves, because there is so much to be discovered and sort of like harvested from those periods. And so I wonder if part of this process for you is honoring all that you've learned in this phase of introspection. Especially if you're moving into more of a social phase after being more inward. It could be that part of this sort of like ceremonial experience for you is like really like recognizing all that you've learned about yourself, all that you've learned about your practices, life in general, and respecting that in some way. Let's go ahead and consult the guidebook to get more formal information. So XXXIII. Okay, so the cave is associated with the dark, the portal, the interior. Those who are fortunate enough to find and enter the cave are forever changed. It's a place of potent power, acting both as portal to another realm and a space for sacred ritual and initiation. The cave is a place to return to for meaningful retreat, where one can see the true self in the darkness. In esoteric teachings, the cave is known to reside in the center of the heart. Within its walls, the whispers of compassion and self-understanding can be heard. Yet because of its mystery and power, many of us fear the cave and never try to find it. We busy ourselves in the bright lights of the city while the cavernous and dimly lit chamber calls out to us in the night. Where is your cave? You already know. Return to it and tend the fire. Slowly and steadily, crystals of enormous magnitude grow within the dark confines of caves. Let the cave teach you patience. Envision yourself as an old sage in a cave. What amenities do you need? What draws you ever closer to the cave within the cave? Okay, so when light, this is connected to the sacred center within. When dark, it's connected to withdrawal, isolation, and hiding, which we did see in this reading. To go deeper, you can connect with Lascaux, incredible caves in France, the Cave of Crystals, or the Blue Grotto. So again, I'm going to hold this up to the screen, and you can take a screenshot when it gets clear, which it should be now. Okay. Thank you, Group 1. If you enjoyed this, please do give me a like, a comment, share it around, and subscribe if you'd like to. And if you'd like a personal reading, you can find the link in the description box. All right. Take care. Bye. Hi, group 2. If you chose the New World Tarot, or I'm sorry, Next World Tarot, not New World, by Cristy and the Rose Quartz Tumbler, this is you. So we're going to get started with your anchor card, which is going to tune us into the way that your creativity tends to be expressed and sort of the nature of it. I'm also going to roll the astro dice to get a little bit more context, and those will be the grounding energies that will help you make sure that this is the right reading for you, but that will also show you or like reflect back at you how your creative power tends to function. And that's helpful not only for those of us who might be more in tune with that already, but also for people who really are not in tune with that. So if this doesn't fully resonate, but it feels like something in your soul is like, yes, yes, then it could be that for you, you're kind of blocked off to this potential, but I'm showing you what's possible. So starting off, your anchor card is the Lovers. And so the Lovers, although, you know, on its surface, let me see if I can get this in focus. On its surface, it is often, appears to be connected to loving relationships with other people. This card in particular shows us a mirror, someone stepping out of a mirror and kind of reflecting back to themselves, a different side of them maybe. And so there's this energy of self-awareness that comes through from the Lovers, like seeing ourselves more clearly. Maybe self-love is a really important part of creativity for you. And in cultivating self-love, I feel like that's where your creative power really comes from. And a lot of that could have to do with body image. It could be that the way you relate to your physical body is a really important piece of that, and that the more you can cultivate love for your corporeal form, the more you're going to be able to tap into your creative gifts. And the more you're going to be able to find yourself and like pursue loving relationships that help support you creatively too. I'm going to roll the dice to get a little bit more information here. So we have Capricorn, the 5th house, and the South Node. So I think for many of you, you may have had a parent or a caregiver who was pretty critical of you when you were younger. And this could have applied directly to your creative practices. Like this could have been someone who was really critical of like the drawings you'd make or the stories you'd write or whatever the case is. And that may have tamped down your creativity in some way. If that doesn't resonate, it could be that there's a sort of commitment and a seriousness that comes through for you when you relate to your creative practices. And that seriousness and commitment, while it can support you in creating, it can also sort of tamp down on the fun of it. Capricorn is not often the most lighthearted energy. It can be a bit more serious. It's connected to Saturn, ruled by Saturn. And then the South Node and the 5th house here are telling me that there's something that needs to be sort of like, there's something that needs to be like dug up from the past for you to examine to really understand the way that your creativity flows. And for some of you, it could be that there were early practices in childhood that you really loved, like early art forms or early forms of expression that you really, really deeply loved and resonated with, but that you may have strayed away from because it didn't feel like you could do it well, or maybe it didn't feel practical. And so there's this need to kind of like do potentially some healing around that stuff in order to unlock the full breadth of your creative power. And again, it feels like self-love is a really important piece of that. And I would also say inner child healing feels like a really important piece of that. And potentially giving yourself like dates with the little one within to allow yourself to play, to allow yourself to do maybe some of the creative activities that you really enjoyed as a kid. And to sort of like tap back into that energy, because it feels like there's so much beauty there. There's a lot of like treasures kind of sitting within you that just need to be kind of like coaxed out with love and compassion and presence. So if that resonates for you, then this is your reading today. If that does not resonate, you might want to go back to the beginning and select a new pile. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. The other thing I'm thinking about right here, because I'm drinking out of my mom's mug, and it says Woman of Faith on it. And so it could be that for some of you, there's some type of religious programming that may also, or family stuff. Again, we already spoke to that, but it could be that there is like some religious programming that may have sort of tamped down your creativity and your feeling of safety in expressing yourself creatively. But let's get into it and dig up more answers. So I want to get a little bit more insight on the way that your creative power works, kind of how it shows up in your life, or how it would like to show up in your life. A little bit more information for my group twos. They're wanting me to just start with this one card. So the card that came out is the Ace of Swords in reverse. And the little tagline that's on this card is the roots of action. And so we see this, I'm totally forgetting what it's called, but it's one of those like little multi-purpose tools that has like all these different little tools on it. And so I feel like for many of you, you could be someone who's focused more on like practical applications of creativity. You could be like someone who works with their hands a lot, or someone who'd like to do that. I'm hearing like steel, I'm hearing like metal because of this card, or even like the earth. Like you could be a gardener, you could be someone who's really like attracted to working with basic elements. So again, like metals, like earth. And it feels like you might be like kind of a jack of all trades, kind of a similar energy to group one. So if that spoke to you, you might want to go back after and listen to that one too. But you could be sort of like a jack of all trades, like someone who has a lot of tools and really practical tools, because we did have Capricorn coming through here. And it could be that like your creativity really shines when it's more practically applicable. And so to give you some concrete examples, like that could be like working with metal. That could be like, I think it's called like forging or something, where, yeah, you like work with metal and like create metalworks. It could be like you make furniture. It could be, again, like gardening. It could be, maybe you're like a carpenter or someone who like fixes things, because we have this like tool set here, or someone who's like sort of like a handyman or a handy person who like is really just like skilled. Like you might be someone who can like put something complex together in minutes that takes other people like hours to figure it out. Or you might be someone who solves tricky problems, and that's the way that your creativity really shines. Like the type of person that you would come to for solutions, the type of person that you would come to when you're really like seeking a path forward, but you're stuck, and you're able to kind of turn it on its head and look at it differently and understand how something functions. Like I even hear the type of person who might like deconstruct things and then like put them back together for fun. Like maybe it's like a clock or a watch, or like working with electronics is another thing that comes through here, or like cars. Like maybe you're like a mechanic and someone who can really like get in there and like understand how an engine functions. And so there's this real like deep practicality and like usefulness that comes through. And I feel like that's an area that you really thrive in, but you might also be craving kind of tapping into more of like the imaginative side of this, but we'll see. You don't have to. That's not how creativity functions for everyone. So what else? They might not want me to pull another card for this, because that kind of... Do you want me to pull another? No. Okay. They want me to move on, so we're going to move on. It could be that this is just grounding you in what's already true for you, and that we're going to see more potentially kind of unfold here. So what are the creative blockages that my group twos are facing? What are the creative blockages that my group twos are facing? I did see the moon card show up. I didn't take it. but it did show up. So I'll start there, and then I'll speak to the cards that are coming out. Okay, so to speak to the moon first, that has to do specifically with the subconscious and with the imagination, like I just spoke to. So it could be that that blockage I was feeling where no other cards wanted to come out is that you may be limiting yourself. You may be limiting yourself to doing things that are functional. You, again, could come from a family where it was like, art isn't practical. And so you found a way to access your creativity in ways that were like acceptable, in ways that were validated, in ways that didn't get you ridiculed or like called silly. And so part of the blockage for you could be just that you have sort of distanced yourself from your intuition and from your imagination. And it's not like you're not using it, because all types of creativity require some degree of imagination. Like we have to imagine solutions in order to start working toward them. And so I feel for you that you really are accessing your imagination all the time, but you might like really be desiring to access it in a different way that maybe feels a little bit more expansive and less tangible at times. That may feel like no thank you to you too. So that's just something to think about. The first blockage on the table that we're seeing here is the Devil. And so this card, there's so much imagery happening here, and it's all kind of connected to consumerism and capitalism on this card. There's some words across the top of it that say dissolve the empire undertaking. And so then it says the new order of the ages. And so again, we had Capricorn come out earlier. Capricorn could be really significant in your chart. And I forgot to mention the Lovers is associated with Gemini. So far we have Capricorn, Gemini. We also have more Cap on the table, and then we have Scorpio. And then the moon is associated with Pisces. So those signs could be relevant to you. You could have significant placements or angles in any of those signs. So what I'm feeling is that it could be a relationship with money that's coming up as a blockage here, or a relationship to just the systems that you function under. Maybe it's a commitment to a job. Maybe it's something that like really has you hooked. It could be that for you, the sort of like need to be practical bled into this need to acquire a lot of belongings, and more of like this materialism and this desire to fulfill or scratch this sort of itch within by accumulating a lot. And no matter how much you possess materially, it could be that that's just something that's operating for you. Like you feel this compulsion toward like acquiring more in order to stay safe. It could be that pressure has been on you since you were quite young to maybe be a provider, to maybe be someone who could like contribute financially, practically to the family, so to speak, whatever family looked like for you. But it does feel like there's like this energy that's coming through here where you're needing to like sort of divest from some of these old ways of being. And so I'm going to say this, I know this isn't going to land for everyone listening here, but for many of you, this is like taking a really hard look at the way that you operate under capitalism and the way that you relate to capitalism. And it could be that you're needing to examine that and really like take a serious look at how that system lives within you. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then I would encourage you to go just like research anti-capitalism and to explore it. If you do know what I'm talking about and you are someone who kind of already identifies as being more anti-capitalist, then it could be that you are just needing to kind of recognize the internalized capitalism that is operating within you and that's like really contributing to your relationship with your creativity. It could be for some of you too, that you've always felt the need to monetize your passion. So you've always felt the need, which is like not a personal problem. I want to make that clear. Like it's a systemic issue. We're forced to do that. We're forced to like put a price tag on practically everything that we make so that we can survive under the system. But that doesn't mean that we can't have awareness of that and sort of consciously do it instead of just like unconsciously always saying like, oh, how can I price this? How can I make money off of this? And I do feel that it would be powerful for some of you to reserve some things in your life and keep them sacred and keep them like off the table, keep them personal. And if you come from a family that felt more exploitative in that way, like maybe your gifts where it sort of like had dollar signs on them or something. It could be that that's like an important piece of healing that would open the door to a lot of creative power for you if you were to kind of go back and like sift through that stuff. I didn't even like clock the second card on the table here, but it's the Four of Pentacles. And so the key word associated with the Four of Pentacles is arsenal. This is someone who has a lot kind of in their toolkit, and that's a term that keeps coming up as like toolkit for you. So let me see if I can get this in focus. There we go. So it's someone who has a lot in their arsenal. With the Four of Pentacles in reverse, there's often this like call to release some degree of control. It could be that we're feeling insecure. It could be that, again, we're feeling like materially insecure and that that's a part of the struggle that's coming up for us that's sort of blocking us from accessing our creative potential. So that could be it in part. It could be that like you maybe are desiring control in some realm of life, and that gripping, that like grasping for control is sort of like preventing the flow of creative energy. And that's something that's very common. Like when creativity is kind of like honestly the opposite of control, more so than like forcing something, most of the time we need to just get out of our own way. And then things can flow through us. We allow an idea to sort of drop into us or find inspiration, and then we just roll with it and we kind of follow the course, follow what the path that we're guided down often. Not all the time, not for everyone. But it feels like for you, that might be really difficult to access that flow. Like that's kind of the point of this reading. Like, how can you do that? And for you, it feels like attempting to release control is a really big part of that. And I'm just laughing because I know that's hard. Like I can relate to this a lot. It's very difficult. And especially if like scarcity stuff has been like hovering around us forever, which it has for most of us. And for you, it feels like examining your relationship to money, examining your relationship to what you possess, and then in turn, examining your relationship to control are a really big deal here and are something that can really help you to open the door to more. Finally, we have the Seven of Cups in reverse, which is imagination. And that's a word that came up in a big way. We had the moon pop up and I brought that up earlier. So imagination in the reverse here, and I'm seeing that with the Lovers too, like being able to look in the mirror and to see something like totally kind of like wild and different. There's this real incredible power that comes through with imagination and with connection to something beyond ourselves. We are often told throughout our lives that imagination might be like unimportant or frivolous, which is so false. Imagination is what helps us access possibility. It's what helps us revolutionize. It's what helps us like see a future that no one else could have imagined and to work toward that. And as I mentioned, it feels like you access your imagination all the time, but maybe in more practical ways. And so for you, it feels like that blockage comes through and that you might be having a difficult time tuning in, and you might be so focused on the tangible, the material world, that you're not often sort of indulging this part of yourself that does desire to go beyond that, to connect to something bigger. So now I'm going to go through and pull a card for each one of these blockages, and we're going to connect with some potential helpful ways to overcome those. And then after that, we'll move into like additional creative actions you can take. And then finally your creator archetype. So let's start with The Devil. What is the answer to the Devil? What is the answer to the Four of Pentacles in reverse? And the answer to the Seven of Cups in reverse. Gotta get this. Okay, so I'm going to take 2 for that one. But let's start with the Devil. We have the Seven of Wands. Whew, all right. There's a feisty energy coming through here. So the Seven of Wands is courage on this card. That's the word. And we see this person who is resisting police violence, and they're sitting in a peaceful position, and they have candles around them. And there's this like all of these like police in the background. And this card is connected to Mars and Leo. So I do feel like for you, it takes courage to divest from the systems that you've been a part of, and maybe from the family that you've been a part of. But that courage is the answer to the Devil, to more of like the internalized capitalism, the materialism, the ideas that you've been fed, as we all have, and that it requires courage to stand out, courage to resist, courage to go against the grain, to step up, to maybe fight on behalf of people, on behalf of nature, on behalf of our world that is suffering at the hands of capitalism. And so for you, that could be a part of your path. That could be a part of your path that helps you open the door to your own creativity, is maybe tapping into that sort of sacred rage and tapping into the energy you have that's going to arm you with what you need to kind of like push forward and to divest in the ways that you're capable of divesting. For the Four of Pentacles in reverse, which was connected more to that sense of control, and I'm sorry it got dark here, we'll figure it out. For your answer here is the Four of Wands in reverse, and this is connected to Venus and Aries. The word here is harmony. And the Four of Pentacles, this control stuff, this connection to possessions, I feel is really, again, connected to the family. And the Four of Wands is often connected to family too, or a sense of home. And so for you, maybe some of you live at home or live with family, and that's a real like inhibiting force in your life, in your creative practices. Maybe for some of you, you're needing to establish a home of your own that has more harmony. Maybe there's some degree of disharmony, conflict, ongoing discord in your home or in your family of origin that continues to impact you creatively. And I feel like it's interesting that we have 2 fours here. We have the Four of Pentacles in reverse and the Four of Wands in reverse. And so I feel like the answer to that control is removing yourself maybe from forces in your life that have been coercively controlling. Maybe that's like setting boundaries with family, or even when necessary, sort of cutting cords with family, or cutting cords with influences in your life that really push you and attempt to control you and attempt to kind of keep you under their thumb, because that is really inhibiting you, not just like creatively, but just in your well-being overall. And then for the Seven of Cups in reverse, which was connected to imagination, we have the Five of Cups in reverse, Mars and Scorpio, associated with the word loss. And then we have the Five of Swords in reverse, Venus and Aquarius, which is associated with survival. And so again, I feel like you may have experienced a significant loss when you were young. You may have really dealt with a lot of scarcity fears. You could be someone who experienced houselessness or various degrees of poverty, someone who really had to kind of fight for what you had, to fight for your survival. And so this relationship with resources is like all the more complex if that's true for you. If that's not true for you, it could be that that's just something that you've sort of experienced at a lesser degree, at a less severe degree, but something that has still impacted you. And I get this feeling again of like you being told that something was silly or frivolous and you needing to focus on what was practical, quote unquote. It's like the really typical thing of like, you can't be an artist, you have to be a doctor, you have to like do a specific trade that's like, you know, working with your hands, doing something that's like really hands-on, and that you may have actually been like quite a creative and imaginative kid, but that's a part of you that really got suppressed. And so the key to sort of unlocking your imagination again is potentially first like being with the grief, being with what you've lost, making space for those emotions to express themselves. I feel like for a lot of you, you kind of had your childhood stolen from you. And so needing to make space for that pain to emerge and to be felt and to be released is a really important part. And then also with the Five of Swords in reverse and survival, it's like, are there relationships I'm continuing to participate in that continue to make me feel really insecure? And like, I mean, people that are like unkind to me, people that like threaten my sense of well-being. The Five of Swords in reverse can often indicate that we're sort of like laying down the sword and we're not engaging in like unnecessary conflict. When we see the Five of Swords, it's like, traditionally we see someone who's walking away with five swords that they've like stolen, and maybe they've taken it from like their enemy and it's sort of the short-term gain, but it's almost like we know there's going to be a bigger battle in the future. And so for you, it could be that like you're focused on these immediate conflicts that are right in front of you, and it's sort of distracting you from the like larger, the bigger picture. And you're needing to not get caught up in like squabbles and conflicts with people, and more so to find ways to just like detach, because this is Venus in Aquarius. And so there's this like energy of detachment from relationships often. And so I feel like that is another really important piece for you, is like, how can you create more distance between you and harmful relationships that are really inhibiting you? And I feel like as you like both grieve and feel the emotions and then also detach, you're going to find yourself more open to creative practices that engage that imaginative side of you. Okay. So I'm going to clear these cards and we're going to move on to more creative actions that you can take. But first I'm going to turn the light on so you can actually see me. Okay, lighting's a little bit better, but not great. So sorry. Okay, so we're moving on to some creative actions that you can take. I feel like spreading them out for this question instead of shuffling the way I have been. So could I get 3 creative actions for Group 2? Is this upright? Okay. I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety right now. So if you're feeling anxiety after the first part of the reading, like be in with your body and breathing. Noticing when you're holding your breath and tuning into the breath could be something that's valuable right now and always. Okay, so creative actions that you can take. First off, we have the Queen of Pentacles in reverse, which is connected to the Throne of Sanctuary. So we just had these messages about home and about like the material world. With the Queen of Pentacles in reverse, sometimes it means that we might feel ungrounded materially, and we've spoken to that. Interestingly, the Queen of Pentacles is also connected to Capricorn. I feel like for many of you, this is needing to focus on the sanctuary that you create for yourself, needing to maybe simplify. Maybe like you need to get rid of some stuff because it could be sort of like clogging your energy, maybe needing to like downsize in the way of what you possess. I feel like if you clear, also, it doesn't have to be that extreme. It could be just like if you're about to engage in a creative activity, needing to really like clear the area. That's something I did before this reading. And now like the table is a little bit more cluttered and it's stressing me out. So for you, focusing on decluttering physically, I think is going to help you really declutter internally too, and focusing on the space, focusing on the energy of the spaces that you put yourself in is a really powerful action that's going to set you up to harness your creativity and express it in a powerful way. Next, we have the star, which is connected to Aquarius and in turn kind of connected to Uranus. This figure is pouring a pitcher of water onto the earth, and they have all these butterflies and caterpillars around them. So there's this energy of transformation and hope that comes through with Aquarius. Also, Aquarius is often connected to community. And so for you, surrounding yourself with people who have a vision, surrounding yourself with people, and again, I'm going to kind of come back to like activism and potentially more like anti-capitalism might be an important part of your journey. It could be that the way you sort of translate your creative energy is into more like social justice. And that feels like a really powerful path for you if that resonates. For others of you, it feels like connection to nature could be important, spending more time in nature. You could maybe want to connect with the energy of the butterfly as a transformative force and someone that kind of goes through this experience of chrysalis where you're like in the cocoon and they have to like, caterpillars literally have to like melt and become like goo before they turn into a butterfly. And that's wild. That is a radical act. And you might be feeling yourself going through a similar type of experience of chrysalis. But after that, you come into this era of expansion and hope. And so I want to say that if you're feeling really kind of low and if you're feeling uncomfortable and anxious, this is going to shift. It's just going to require hope. And I want you to do your best to cultivate hope by maybe surrounding yourself with people who promote hope instead of people who kind of bring you down, like it feels like you have experienced in a big way. And then the other creative action that you can take is the 10 of Wands in reverse, which is connected to the word completion. And so the 10 of Wands in reverse is often us, 10 of Wands is us coming to the end of a really difficult chapter. It's the end. And I just mentioned like coming out of a significantly difficult time. For you, I feel like rest is so important. I feel like giving yourself time to retreat from the sort of mundane sides of life. I feel like you're someone who carries a lot of responsibility. And so there's a necessity for some degree of seriousness, but that often sort of takes you away from your joy. And so needing to make space for joy and rest is a big part of this journey for you too. And notice I'm not saying like, pick up a pen, write a book. Like I'm not focused on these really like tangible actions. I'm more focused on your energy besides maybe decluttering, which could be literal and tangible, but like cultivating hope through the star and then cultivating rest and joy as best you can and restoring yourself through pleasure and rest is a really big deal for you. And I feel like it's going to unlock a lot of creative potential for you and a lot of healing. Finally, I'm going to pull an archetype card for you. And this is going to kind of be a guidepost for you, something that you can lean on and something you can tap into. Sometimes it's helpful when we can't really tap into it ourselves to imagine that it's like this character that exists outside of ourselves. And so that might be a helpful exercise for you to tune into whatever energy I pull. I'm going to read the description after I kind of just channel intuitively, and then I'll hold the guidebook up for you at the end so you can take a screenshot if you want to, because it usually contains more wisdom, or it always does. Okay, so what is the archetype that you would like my group 2s to tune into? This is the same card from group 1. So you might want to go back and listen to group 1, because I feel like this is sort of, I honestly get the feeling that for many of you, group 1 is sort of showing you possibilities that exist for you when you tap into your imagination, when you sort of access the energy of like water, because you've been very much an earth. So the cave is about going inward. It's about spending time internally and finding our center in our heart. For you, we talked about rest. I think creating quiet for yourself, creating silence, creating an environment that promotes rest and restoration. That is a key. a really big part for you. And going inward to do some of that exploratory work that we've talked about throughout this reading is a big part of that too. And so your reading has been really focused on healing because that's just what's coming up. And I think that as you go inward, you're going to access creative power that has been like felt inaccessible to you, that has felt distant from you. Maybe you've felt some envy when you've seen it in other people who are able to be more like flowy and dreamy and all of that stuff. And that just hasn't landed for you. And that's okay because creativity doesn't have to look one way. But I also feel like for you, that's a deep possibility. And so for you, spending time internally is going to help you sort of like see the full breadth of what's possible. So let me pull up. Oh, it's right here. Okay. So I'm actually not going to read. Maybe I will. I'll read it to you. So the cave is the dark, the portal, the interior. Those who are fortunate enough to find and enter the cave are forever changed. It's a place of potent power, acting both as portal to another realm and a space for sacred ritual and initiation. The cave is a place to return to for meaningful retreat, where one can see the true self in the darkness. In esoteric teachings, the cave is known to reside in the center of the heart. Within its walls, the whispers of compassion and self-understanding can be heard. Yet because of its mystery and power, many of us fear the cave and never try to find it. We busy ourselves in the bright lights of the city while the cavernous and dimly lit chamber calls out to us in the night. Where is your cave? You already know. Return to it and tend the fire. Slowly and steadily, crystals of enormous magnitude grow within the dark confines of caves. Let the cave teach you patience. Envision yourself as an old sage in a cave. What amenities do you need? What draws you ever closer to the cave within the cave? When light, the cave is the sacred center within. When dark, it's connected to withdrawal, isolation, and hiding. To go deeper, you can study Lascaux, the Lascaux caves in France, the Cave of Crystals, or the Blue Grotto. So again, I'm going to hold this up and I'll tell you when it's in focus. All right, it's in focus. You can take a screenshot now. And you can come back to that as you wish. All right. If this was valuable to you, please do give me a like and throw a comment in if it feels right. I really appreciate shares and follows, and all that stuff is great as I build this channel. So thank you so much. And I hope you take care of yourself and get the rest that you need. Sending you love. Hey, group 3, welcome. If you chose the Portals Tarot by Taylor Ursula of That's So Pisces and the Pink Jasper, this is your reading. These cards are so cool. This is like one of my favorite decks of all time. Has this reflective energy on it. So this is going to be our anchor card. We're going to start there, and this will help you identify that this is the right reading for you. I'm also going to throw the astro dice and get a little bit more context. And as a reminder, we're going to start with kind of the way that your creativity flows, and then we'll move into maybe some blockages and then creative actions you can take, and then we'll end on a creative archetype that you can tune into to kind of access your power. Okay, let's get into it. I just also want to give you a heads up that my lighting is not great today, so I'm going to kind of go in and out of darkness, and that might be relevant to you because your anchor card is the star in reverse. And so when we see the star in reverse, it often indicates that there's sort of like an energy of dejection or maybe difficulty accessing hope. So you may literally kind of frequently move between light and shadow. You may frequently kind of find yourself moving through the ups and downs of emotions, and it may feel more hectic for you. And that may also be, though, a way that you are able to tap into your creativity and your creative power, is that you may be someone who really goes in, someone who really goes deep. And in going deep in your sort of like underworld journeys, so to speak, that could be the time when you really kind of gather a lot of insight and maybe do shadow work that sort of serves to then empower you, because that's ultimately what we gain from shadow work, is that we both heal, but we also come back to our personal power. And so it often means that we recognize the ways that we're outsourcing our power to other people. And you might really resonate with that. That might be something that you fall into a habit of doing, is sort of like seeing other people as far more powerful, far more creative, far more talented than you are. And then you need these times of retreat and sort of self-analysis in order to come back to yourself. And then that kind of inspires you to create. But it feels like you have been maybe recently in a lower period where you're feeling not as inspired, not as hopeful. Maybe it feels like you're lacking vision and you're having a hard time kind of like understanding the big picture. Let's roll the astro dice to get a little bit more context. So we have the South Node, Aquarius, and the second house. Interesting. Okay. So for you, Aquarius could be relevant to your chart because the star is connected to Aquarius too. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have major Aquarius placements, either planets or angles in Aquarius. And I want to remind everyone that that's not just the ascendant, which is what we focus on, like your rising sign. There's also your descendant opposite your rising sign. There's also your midheaven at the top of the chart, and then your IC at the bottom. So if any of those are in Aquarius, this is like particularly pertinent to you. But we also have the second house here. So you could have Aquarius on the second house cusp. Maybe you're a Cap rising, not necessarily. But the South Node is telling me that there's some real energy of like digging into the past. We are in Venus retrograde right now and will be until early September. And so for you, you could have noticed throughout this retrograde period a lot of stuff around maybe finances coming up, a lot of maybe scarcity fears coming up, or maybe it's a connection to just relationships from the past. And coming kind of home to your self-worth could be a big deal for you right now. And also showing appreciation to yourself in the way that you defy norms and the way that you sort of stand out. You may be someone who like identifies as more eccentric, or who like other people perceive as more eccentric. You could be someone who really like wants to stand out from the crowd more often. But that could also be a source of pain for you, like feeling like you don't necessarily belong anywhere. And so that sense of belonging and coming home to yourself and feeding your inspiration by doing that sort of depth work feels like it's all like relevant themes for you in this moment of time. And again, sort of like exploring the past. And so if none of that feels relevant to you, then this is not your reading. If it does, then stick around because we're going to be digging in more. I'm going to put this up here as your anchor, and I'm going to pull more cards to understand the way that your creative energy tends to show up. So how do my group threes, how does their creative energy tend to show up or express itself? How does it tend to show up? I have smaller hands, so it's a little hard for me to shuffle this deck, but group three, one more card. They want me to start with two. I've been doing three for the other groups. But similarly, group two, like I was halted and I didn't pull three cards because there was a limitation around their ability to see their creative power. And so that could be true for you too. But let's get more information. So we have the Four of Cups, and then we have the Six of Wands in the reverse. So I wonder, this is kind of specific, but I wonder if sleep is really important to you when it comes to creativity. For some reason, the Four of Cups is making me think of that. Or water could be really important. Like you may be someone who really connects to water. On this card in particular, we have someone who looks like they're stepping into an ocean, and then there's seagulls overhead. So there's also this air energy that we already have on the table with Aquarius. But you could have significant water placements in your chart too. So Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio. So the Four of Cups is bringing me into imagination. And I feel like for many of you, you could be someone who's like a healer, or someone who connects to maybe meditative practices are really important to you, or spiritual practices could be really important. The Four of Cups more traditionally kind of connects us to a feeling of apathy. And so it's not too far off from the energy of the star in reverse, which came up as your anchor. So again, there's this feeling of maybe some apathy, but also I feel like there's some gold in the apathy. Like, again, for you, when you get more discouraged, that might be like the place you're able to really then create from. But I feel like for some of you, you may have gotten so kind of habituated to that you almost like crave feeling sad or feeling like unwell in order to create. And so that could be this sort of like self-perpetuating cycle where you believe you're only a powerful creator when you're in like down states. And that's sort of echoed by the Six of Wands in reverse, which can indicate some like ego stuff coming up, or some maybe like feeling like you've lost, or feeling like I don't want to use like, it's not exactly like a feeling of victimhood per se. It's just more so like discouraged, feeling like you're not celebrated, feeling like you maybe don't get the attention or the recognition that you would like. And that could be significant in the way that your creativity expresses itself again. Like Aquarius can kind of be this like, you know, this oddball energy that kind of takes pride in being like the odd one out, or in standing out in some way, as we mentioned before. And so for you, this sort of identity of like downtroddenness could be a big part of your creative identity at this point, where you sort of like thrive in like proving people wrong, or like disrupting the perception that people have of you. Like I get this sort of like rebel energy from you. And so that could be a big piece of your creative practice, is like sort of like shoving it in people's faces, or like saying like, here I am, I do this differently, or like, you can't like judge me. Like there's this, I don't know, there's this like a little bit of like feisty energy that comes through here. And so for many of you, it could be that like, again, we talked about like meditative practices and more like spiritual practices is maybe a real big piece of your creativity. But there's also this energy of like rebellion that feels really creative for you. And maybe sometimes that's like at your own expense. Maybe it's not always super productive, but it does feel like a lot of the time you're tapping into more of this rebellious energy in a way that actually aids your creative processes. And so there might be some work to some healing stuff, some self-reflection to do around the ways that that could also like bite you in the if you like get too attached to being a person who like doesn't win, or being a person who's hated, or being a person who like other people are jealous of. Like that could be a piece of this too. Like that there may be this like ego piece that's like, other people don't like me, like I never win. Like this is kind of what I'm feeling. But for many of you, it does feel like you're healers, and it feels like you are self-aware, but maybe you've also like had these experiences that have reinforced this idea to you that like you're not gonna succeed, and that becomes this like motivation piece for you almost. Okay, so I kind of want to stop there and move into your blockages, which we've already kind of touched on. But let's explore what my group 3's blockages are when it comes to their creativity. Ooh, that's too many. I just want 3, please. Just 2 more. Group 3. 1 more. Okay. All right. So, we have 3 cards. We have the 9 of Pentacles upright, we have the Ace of Wands upright, and we have the 4 of Swords in reverse. Sleep is a big deal for you all. All right, starting with the 9 of Pentacles upright. One blockage is maybe hyper independence. So we talked about the Aquarian energy of maybe like being a sort of rebel, being thoughtful about maybe when you're being more of a rebel without a cause, without a vision. The 9 of Pentacles is an energy of more self-sufficiency. And so it could be that a blockage for you is that you really do think that you have to do it all on your own. And that could have been a reality for you at some points in your life. And then you sort of leaned into that because you learned that you could do a lot on your own. But it may at this point be sort of limiting your progress and limiting your creative progress specifically because you believe that you really do have to do everything. And this could look like kind of maybe being a bit more controlling if you're in like collaborative environments or like with colleagues. I'm getting the type of person who might like always pick up the leadership role and always initiate, but that can become really exhausting. And it can also create this like separateness from you and other people in your life. And so sometimes maybe it means like backing away and taking more of a passive role where you don't have to initiate everything. You don't have to do everything by yourself. And that could be an important gateway for you into accessing creative power, because you're not having to manage everything. You're not having to attend to all the details. You're not having to focus so much on keeping everything in line. But we'll get into it because I'll pull a card for each of these blockages to talk about kind of potential pathways forward too. Next, we have the Ace of Wands. And so inspiration could be a difficult one for you. We have more of this like, not like apathetic, but more of this like slightly discouraged energy that came through with the Star in reverse and then with the Four of Cups earlier. And so it feels like with the Ace of Wands upright, just like that spark of motivation is often a blockage for you. Like you may sense that you're a highly creative person, but that like sparking that fire, lighting the fire and taking the first step is often where you struggle. So like initiating, interestingly, I just said that you initiate a lot, but that could be more like practical stuff, more like putting your hands in too many baskets or whatever the phrase is, and distracting yourself from like the real source of like the real thing. And so with the Ace of Wands, you're needing to maybe focus your efforts a little bit more and maybe approach things with more intention. And I feel that with intention, that would be a helpful way to kind of like overcome this blockage. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. And there was some impatience here too, to be honest. So you might feel a little impatient. Four of Swords in reverse is telling me that there's a real need for rest and a need for healing. The Four of Swords can sometimes be connected to like actual sleep. And I brought that up already. So for you, being able to retreat, creating time of retreat for yourself, but not getting stuck there, not getting lost there, not going into an energy of like total detachment from the world, but more so like giving yourself concrete boundaried time where you can retreat, where you can turn devices off, where you can kind of turn your brain off for a little bit, where you can be just in this like easy peasy flowy space that doesn't require you to keep creating. Because if you're already someone who is like doing a lot, then it could be that you've sort of like gotten into this rhythm where you feel like you have to constantly be doing. And so I feel like that might be wearing you out. You could be experiencing some degree of burnout and just exhaustion. And so giving yourself the rest that you need and creating boundaries around that, like giving yourself a bedtime, giving yourself a time when you need to turn your devices off, giving yourself a time when you can like just be in silence, feels really important, and probably not your idea of fun, but sorry. Okay, I'm going to get specific solutions for each of these blockages, or just like guidance, additional guidance that we need. Okay. So first up, for the Nine of Pentacles, which was sort of hyper independence and feeling like you need to be self-sufficient and kind of initiate everything and take care of everything, we have the Five of Pentacles upright. So there is a need to actually be aware of your limitations and to be a little bit more conscious of like your limited finite energy, because I feel like you've sort of been treating yourself as if you have these like unlimited reserves of energy, but you need to actually be conscious of like where your limits are, because it's actually not like as generative as you think it is to keep going in this way. I feel like, coming back to the message about rest, one thing that's really important here is to like recognize what is mine and what is yours, and to have boundaries with yourself around that. The Five of Pentacles often speaks to material scarcity. And so you could be overdoing it and kind of over giving in places that aren't supporting you financially. And I get the sense that for many of you, you need more financial support. Like maybe you're experiencing material scarcity. And so if that's true, then kind of focusing on that and focusing on what you can invest your time into that actually generates money and that supports you financially is going to be an important thing. And like, that's not so that you can be hyper independent and lean further into that sort of self-sufficiency, but you do need some degree of financial independence and support so that you can feel well, so that you can feel balanced. And I feel like you have, again, like your fingers in a lot of pies. I keep throwing out these random terms that are probably not right, but it feels like you're like really kind of giving a lot of yourself and that you need to just be more mindful. The second solution is for the Ace of Wands, which is about inspiration and that sort of like self-starting energy. For this, we have the Knight of Pentacles in reverse. So I'm hearing that for some of you, you might need to examine your commitments and examine what you've been giving a lot of energy to and see if your energy is in the right place. And the other piece of this is like, you may struggle with commitment too. Like you may be at once really committed to stuff that is not particularly supportive of you, while also maybe neglecting things that could be really great for you. And so I feel that when you kind of focus on your resources, on your material resources, that's an important gateway into your creative, like, exploration, because when you meet that material need to like feel stable, to feel financially stable, to feel materially stable, you're going to feel a whole lot more creative too. And that's going to assuage some of the anxiety and maybe some of the like sort of discouragement that's coming up right now, because it does feel like you're really depleted. And then finally with the Four of Swords in reverse, which was connected to maybe a need for rest and that showing up as a blockage, we have the Four of Wands in reverse. And so the Four of Wands in reverse feels often like there's a sort of disharmony at home, or like we can't find our sense of home, or maybe we're always searching, or we're always flitting between homes or places. So for you, again, like focusing on your foundation is really important. And this could be like your literal home, or this could be like focusing on your chosen family and like putting more energy into creating a sense of community. I feel like this ties back to the piece about rest. It could be that like part of what's getting interrupted for you when it comes to rest is that you're not in a great home environment. And it could be that you're really needing to move. That could be a reality for many of you. Like you will be moving in the near future. And I feel that when you do move, you're going to settle into a place that is much more harmonious, that maybe you don't feel like you need to stay on your phone until the wee hours or whatever, because you just easily like drift into bed, or like easily just like calm down and experience ease at night. And I feel like you want that, like you want that rest, you want that recuperation. But you feel like for many of you, you're kind of in limbo right now and you're like unsettled. And as you find a place to settle down in, and as you focus on your resources, I feel that that foundation, like caring for the material stuff, is going to really like hugely open up your creative power. Okay. So next, we're going to focus on some other creative actions you can take. We already kind of went through that with this last section, but this will maybe give us more specifics and new information. And then we'll end on the creator archetype that you can work with. All right, so what creative actions can group 3 take? All right. So first up, we have the Page of Wands. This is someone who harnesses creativity, literally. Like, I feel like you are someone who's actually quite confident in your creative abilities. But again, it's like this material stuff has kind of been getting in the way. For you, like really affirming that is important. Also taking more of like a beginner mindset when it comes to some stuff and bringing back some fun, some play, some excitement, maybe trying out new mediums. If you're an artist, whatever type of creative you are, it feels like just exploring could be important, and sort of doing things that light you up and following what feels good is a big deal. So allow yourself to play, allow yourself to explore, allow yourself to not get stuck in like one pathway. And I don't mean, again, like pouring your energy into like 17 different things that aren't like returning your energy. I more so mean like playing and bringing lightheartedness, because it feels like you've been stuck in this energy of commitment and responsibility and like, again, like doing it all, doing a lot. And I feel like bringing more lightheartedness that isn't like work, that isn't like supporting other people, that isn't so focused on that heavy lifting, but it's more light lifting, is going to help you. And it feels like it's also healing. Like this is kind of like inner child play. Next, we have the Two of Swords in reverse. So you might need to make an important decision, and I feel like you're not trusting yourself on this. This could be related to the home. This could be related to moving. This could be related to even a relationship, maybe for some of you, although that feels less relevant. Or this could be related to like a creative project that you're considering investing in, but you just don't know which direction to turn. And it feels like you're not trusting your intuition. And so I'm going to encourage you to spend time a little bit in silence, not like listening to readings to try to make this decision, but sitting in silence and really tuning in with yourself, tuning in with your body. Considering two choices and noticing how they feel in your body. Considering two choices and noticing if they bring up a feeling of anxiety or a sense of calm. And allowing that to be your guide, because it feels like you absolutely contain this answer within you already, but you're sort of like so distracted by so many things that you're having a hard time just like sitting down and being with it. And then finally, the moon. My dog started barking really loudly, so we're coming back. I was about to say that sleep is really important, and I know I've mentioned this again, but I'm going to keep saying it. And I think her barking probably was also an indication that there is some disruption that's happening with your sleep. So maybe there's it would be good for you to sleep with your phone outside of the bedroom, like in a completely different room. Maybe you have roommates who like tend to interrupt your sleep or something, and you need to wear earplugs or ask them to quiet down. Or maybe you're just in an environment, again, that's hard to sleep in. And so there is this disruption happening. The creative action you can take, the few things that I just mentioned, like really protecting your sleep as best you can given the circumstances. And then also I'm feeling like meditation or visualization or any sort of like meditative practices are a really important piece for you. So again, like finding ways to tap into the subconscious, and like that can sort of help you with the sleep side of things too. And maybe doing this before bedtime and as you start the day, like developing more of a ritual around the start and the end of your day could be a really good way for you to kind of like enter life with a little bit more energy and a little bit more hope. Okay. So finally, I'm going to pull an archetype for you. And this is just meant to help you kind of like hold on to something and maybe practice sort of role playing or tuning into whatever energy comes up here, because this is going to be a creative gateway for you. I'm going to intuitively pick a card, or I'm going to intuitively translate the card once I pick it, and then I'll hold the card up to you or the guidebook up to you after I read it, so you can take a screenshot too. It always contains more information that can be helpful if you want to go deeper. Okay, so your creative archetype is the Eternal Child. So that is lovely. Holding it up to the screen so you can even take a screenshot of this card if you want to. So the Eternal Child is beautiful because we have like talked about needing play and needing to kind of be with this part of yourself that can be creative in a less pressured way. Needing to engage like more lighthearted energy and sort of bring back that creative spirit. But also like this might involve inner child healing of some kind. That might be something to focus on, and just consulting your inner child before you take big steps, before you make choices. See what feels safe for them and allow that to be a priority of yours. So the eternal child is connected to the inner child, the child of joy. The eternal child is connected to the timeless, ageless, and infinite aspects of life. It is radiant and fearless and seeks joy above all else and at any cost. It struggles being bound to an aging body with physical limitations in a world that demands attention to detail and logistics. The eternal child wants to nix all rules and responsibilities and go beyond what others say is possible. It wants to return, with plenty of friends, to the land of the free, where divine wine and creativity pour from the earth and sky. We all want to sip from the well of eternal youth, and this makes the eternal child naturally popular, perhaps even famous. The eternal child glimmers. It reminds us of what is possible, what is magical about this precious life. Very on point with Aquarius energy, too. This archetype is so spirited that when its appetite for life isn't satiated, it seeks spirits and substance elsewhere. The eternal child struggles with addictions of all varieties. So for some of you, that could be like screen addiction, that could be like phone addiction, or it might be more like substances or behaviors that feel more addictive. So definitely something to think about as you're maybe healing and as you're moving through this phase of difficulty. Celebrity culture is based heavily on this archetype, as is the phrase live hard, die young, and the series of artists and musicians who died at 27. Yeah, so the age 27 could be really significant for you. If you're younger than that, please don't fear. This isn't an omen, but it's more just like a reminder to care for your body, to give your body rest, to give your body space to recuperate, and to not pour your energy limitlessly into sources that aren't mutually supporting you, that aren't reciprocal. So when light, this archetype is joyful, playful, accepts all, and it's magical. When dark, it's addicted, selfish, adrift, and burns out. To go deeper, you can study, I never know how to pronounce this. I think it's Icarus, who was like the god who flew too close to the sun after his father made him wings that I think were adhered to him with wax. And then he flew too close to the sun and the wax melted and he fell from the sky. And I think he died in mythology. And so there's something there about like recklessness and about needing to be mindful again of your limitations. That was a message earlier, like really being thoughtful, like studying your boundaries and not considering them like glaring weaknesses or flaws, but more so just like your very human limitations. And you can also study Peter Pan and Rumi's Has Anyone Seen the Boy? So those could all be meaningful explorations for you if you want to go deeper with the eternal child. So I'm holding it to the screen and it is focused if you want to take a screenshot. All right. That's all I got. If this was valuable for you, please do like, comment, share, subscribe. It's all really supportive to me as I build this channel out. And if you'd like a personal reading, you can find a link below in the description box to book or to follow me on social. I post a lot of like little mini readings on Instagram and TikTok that I don't post on YouTube. So if you're interested in those, please do give me a follow. Otherwise, I will see you in future readings and I'm sending you all the best. Lots of love, Pile 3. Bye.